Hey everybody, Robot here from Vespa, Motorsport, and ScooterWest.com. So you got a 2023 or newer Vespa GTS, Super Sport, Super Tech, pretty much any of the GTS 300s, not the GTV. They have this new style switchgear, and many of the trim levels have it, or they all have it in chrome. And you have a Super Tech or a Super Sport. It's got really nice black trim throughout the whole scooter. What's the best thing you do? Replace these housings with some nice quality painted finished ones. So it's quite a big job to do. You can watch my prior video on how to remove these switches, but I'm going to show how to swap this outer skin to this whole entire switch gear for both the left and right side, every single step. Maybe gloss black isn't your thing. Part number for this gloss black is 1D003878-9-BK. We do have the matte black, which is the suffix of MBK. And we also have, as I like to call it, the fake carbon fiber, just like you find on the front of the horn cover on the Super Sport. So that would match as well. So there's a clear-coated hydro dip carbon fiber look, the matte finish, and the black. So a big job ahead of us. Check out all the tools you're going to need to get started on this, and then watch my next video. I'll show how these are installed, pretty much a reverse order of how I took them out on that previous video. So before you tackle something as complicated as the Italian switches found on the 2023 and later GTS, you need to enjoy yourself an espresso shot. All right, so before we get started, you want to be set up with the right kind of tools and work surface. So I have some nice bright lights. I'm just working at a regular kitchen table kind of style bench here. First of all, you want to have some type of mat. You're going to be taking apart lots of difficult pieces that you're going to need to put some force in. So I just have this like pig mat here, but use a mouse pad, whatever. Some type of rubber mat is going to be very helpful for this job. Yeah, the existing housings I already took off. Some jeweler's files are going to be handy, as the new housings may need some slight modifications. A number 2 Phillips screwdriver, because that's what holds the switches to these housings. You're going to need some smaller flat blade screwdrivers, kind of jeweler size. Even a pick may be useful. As you can see, they're pretty tiny. Good for prying at some of the pieces we're going to need to do. You're also going to need to do some heavy duty prying. So the tool trim at Scooter West, we have these available, pretty inexpensive. They're just a small set of trim tools, diagonal pliers, scissors, and some of the materials you're going to need to separate the adhesive. Denatured alcohol works really well. You can get that at any paint store or home improvement store. It doesn't beat up your hands as much as acetone. Dielectric grease is pretty important because we're going to have small intricate parts that we need to either secure or lubricate or keep moisture out of contacts, and this will do all 3 of those. You only need a very little of this. Sometimes you can buy the little packets of it. You don't necessarily need to buy the Cheese Whiz style tube. Zip ties, some small ones. The miniature zip ties are like a 1/10 inch wide, 4 inches long. Some paper towels. I have some 180 grit sandpaper because we need to thin down some of those switches. And I have this very thin 3M Scotch brand high bond double stick tape. That's pretty useful. It may be possible to use a glue as well. I haven't tried it, but you do need to reattach the nylon inners to these switch housings. So set yourself up for success and have all the right tools, and let's get started. It's a long video. I'm going to show you every step of how to do this. This is definitely not the easiest job. So if you watched my previous video, I show how to remove the switchgear off your 2023 and later GTS. The switches work really good, but they're extremely complicated to rebuild. Maybe you're watching this video just to see how you could troubleshoot the switch. We'll kind of go over that. But more importantly, I'm going to go ahead and install the covers. So we'll start with the harder switch, which is the left switch. It's got the little joystick on it. We'll flip it over, and you can see there's some zip ties that hold the two bundles of wiring right here. So go ahead, use some small diagonals. This is like electrical wire cutters, real small stuff. You don't want to nick the wiring, but you need to get those zip ties out of the way, because we're going to take all these switches off this cover here. Start with your number 2 Phillips screwdriver. We'll get started with the easiest switch, which is the button for the horn, I think that is. So just go ahead and use your number 2 Phillips, remove the 2 screws. Fortunately, all 8 of these screws that hold each of the individual switches to this cover are all the same. So it just pulls right out, nice and easy there. Just keep in mind, you can't make any mistakes on this job, because none of these individual switches are available as spare parts. If you break them, or they're damaged, or have an issue, buy the whole entire switch assembly, either the left or the right switch. So this is the joystick right here, and the other screw is just located right underneath that bundle wiring that goes into the little joystick right there. So horn button, get the joystick out of the way. Go ahead and flip it back over. You see the button doesn't quite want to come through. It almost does. I'm going to take something like the Scooter West tool trim. Go ahead and get probably the smallest fork that's in there. So like a fork tool like this. And just have your finger on it, probably directly straight up, and it will come off. And sometimes it takes a little bit. Set that aside. Now the joystick will pull away. And that's the easy part. From here out, it's going to get pretty dang difficult. So you have 2 remaining switches. The turn signal, which is the hardest one, we'll say that one for last. I always say the hardest for last. And then the high-low switch. So the high-low switch, right through this little window right here, is a nylon tab on a post. That's part of the actual switch assembly that attaches the switch cap. And you're going to need to push tremendously hard into that little slot right there. And something like a fork tool or any of these plastic pry tools. And it's going to take a bit of work. You may need to have 2 hands. I also have this little mat here, so the switch isn't slipping all over the place. I'm not stabbing myself. I'll try to do it so the camera can see what I'm doing. So I'm pushing right in the center. And you want to get underneath the switch. And it kind of wants to switch side to side. Almost there. Make sure you don't have it go flying across the room. You might have better luck with a fork, you know, kind of once you start prying it. There we go. So it popped off. So the screwdriver was in there, and as what it was pushing on is, you can see it's hollow right there, and there's a little tang that catches the little ledge of the switch. So go ahead and set that aside. You want to make nice little piles of your parts that keep them all organized. I'm going to go back over. And we're going to go ahead and remove the 2 screws that hold this high-low switch. Watch everything I'm doing. You might want to re-watch this section. There's a lot of little like springs and balls that are going to want to pop out. And again, if you lose them, you're going to be SOL. And it's nice to have a magnet sometimes too. So I got this handy little screwdriver. It has a magnet on the back side. Another good mat that would work is if you have a neoprene, like one of those old mouse pads. Even better yet, a locksmith mat, which is a rubber mat. That's a really nice mat to use. So release those 2 screws. I'm going to carefully lift up on the switch here. And just carefully lift up. And you can see the first spring right there. You can grab it with the diagonals, a needle nose, and it's got kind of a square section of the spring that goes in that little slot. So we'll separate that, put it with the high-low switch. But the part where you might lose things is, so you see these contacts right here. There's this triangle contact and there's also this flat contact. And it slides all the way towards my right. And that's how you can release it. There's a slot that's just a little more open. And you can see a spring in there. It's still held in with a little bit of grease. Sometimes it will fall out. And another part that's left behind is that little detent ball right there. So I don't think it's magnetic. I checked that actually before. Maybe you want to have needle nose, something, but it's a very small size ball bearing. Go ahead and set that aside. So this switch is all apart. Now we're going to tackle the more difficult switch here. So what you want to do is you're going to need to pretty much take this whole entire switch apart, because it's kind of only designed to go together once technically. We're only going to remove one screw at first. So the one that's towards the outside of the grip. Again, the same style screw here. And this is where it gets a little more complicated. The reason I only loosen one is so this switch body has a little bit of flex. This stuff is very fragile in here. As the scooter ages, it's probably going to get worse because it is plastic. So I jam one flat screwdriver kind of in between. Then I'm going to put another one right here. And just, I'm pretty much carefully prying. Trying to do this so the camera can see it, because normally I'd have it right over my head and be looking right down at it. And see how that's lifting away? That little tab right there popped out of that little black slot right there. So once you have that side popped, we'll move on to the other side. You have the wires in the way. We're going to leave the screw there. That's fine. And pretty much do the same step. There's a tab here too, but I found that you just leave that one alone. You lever the two sides out, and that's going to be your best solution. So it's going to be even more difficult on this side since we have some pressure of the switch already levered slightly out. So I got the slightly bigger, small jeweler's screwdriver on this side. And I'm ever so carefully levering this out right now. So get this back in there. I know that I'm kind of doing it right on top here because I kind of want to see. There we go. So I pried and both those tabs separated out. So at this point, the whole wiring can be separated, put aside, and you have the one part of the turn signal. So you got that contact board right there. We can lift this out very carefully. And again, you're going to see a ball, and there's also a spring under there. If it's staying in place, that's fine. Just leave it alone, and we'll set that aside. So now you could see the actual turn signal switch. It actually is spring loaded, so you're going to have a spring that's going to want to explode on you. There's this little omega shaped little retainer right here. And you could usually use a flat blade screwdriver and just kind of lever it out. See how it's popping down? Make sure that doesn't fly across the room, because I did take one apart and it flew across the room. Go and set that aside with your turn signal components. And I'm holding the button because the button, there's going to be a spring that's going to want to pop out. So I'm cupping my hand and I'm carefully pulling the button out. So just to show you where the spring is, it's barely hanging in there, but normally it wants to explode just like that and go across the room. The spring separated, we have that set aside, and you have the last remaining screw for the housing of the turn signal switch. And that just comes out like such. So there's two parts of the switch, the actual outer housing, which is what we want to replace. The replacements are painted. They're not quite molded to the exact same caliper. You know, the undercuts are slightly different when they made the tool for the the replacement switch housing, so they're not quite to the same tolerance. I'll show you. The original switch housing, not only they have these tabs on the lower part and the upper part, these tabs here, they also have tons of double stick adhesive. So it's going to be a combination to separate this. We're going to get screwdrivers in here. You can get pry tools, whatever you can. And you could kind of start levering off. The adhesive is extremely strong. And typically, you just want to have that open there. And ideally, you would have something like denatured alcohol. Isopropyl is probably not strong enough. Another product that used to be called Vestine, I forgot what kind of alcohol that is, but that's a very strong adhesive remover. The only thing I'm lacking is a dropper, like a little dropper for dropping this alcohol in between the switch gear. But I'll be able to carefully pour a small amount in there, and it kind of attacks the you can see it attacking the adhesive. So see how I wasn't able to even pry it, but once there's that alcohol in there, it definitely starts attacking the adhesive and wanting to come apart. And again, you may want to get these tools in there, and you probably want to work it from both sides. So we'll kind of have that separated, let that alcohol eat up that adhesive, and then do the same on this side. There's some heavy adhesives on this side, kind of get them freed up. And you may want to pour a little bit more alcohol. Actually, this side's coming up a little easier, but there's a lot of adhesive right here and back there. So maybe I'll give it one more little pour in there, just getting the seams. Probably shouldn't be smelling this stuff, but or wearing gloves with it, but whatever. It's starting to come. There we go. I can feel the adhesive tearing away from this chrome. Make sure you don't knock all your parts there. There we go. Got it separated. You can see all the adhesive in there. We'll set the chrome aside. And at this point, you want to remove all this adhesive. Use your fingernails. You could use these as scrapers. These pry tools work great as scrapers, but just make sure you get all this adhesive out of here, because you can't have this any thicker than just that thin amount of adhesive. So use your fingers to kind of ball it up. That's another way to get rid of this adhesive, and it's kind of all over the place. All right, so we got all the adhesive out of the way. Didn't knock any of those little parts, which is the important. Don't want to lose anything there. We're gonna go with glossy black for the switch gears. So you pretty much get the identical side right here. It's gonna snap on that. A little bit you gotta do to get these to fit correctly. So first of all, you want to take a rag or something that doesn't leave lint behind. Put a little bit more of that denatured alcohol on that rag. And just kind of clean everything up even one last time, because you don't want to have any oils. Probably should even be wearing gloves on this, because these high bond adhesives can't have any residues, and it's getting the last little bit there too. So this is nylon here, nice and flexy. This is a very rigid plastic, probably ABS or something like that. So the inside, wipe it. Be careful not to wipe the outside, because the outside is a painted clear coat, you know, two-stage paint. So that's pretty clean right now. even missed a little adhesive here, but there we go. So the last little bit of adhesive. We're not going to go quite as crazy on the adhesive as they originally did. I mean, you could probably glue this in as well. I've never tried it. The thing is it doesn't quite snap in there as good as the original switch gear. There's those two tabs. You can kind of hear that little snap right there. And then the upper just doesn't quite want to. And the reason for the adhesive is, see that gap right there? You want to get that closed up the best you can. Because this is what bolts the handlebars. You don't want to end up with a weird gap up there. So we're going to go ahead and prep this with some adhesive. And I'm going to specifically use this really thin double stick, it's like 3M or Scotch, real thin stuff. Very high bond adhesive here. And just go ahead, have some scissors. It's very tacky and sticky. Just cut a strip of it. And you have the backing. That's fine that the backing's in place. And you can find this adhesive, you know, like some like McMaster Car, or I don't know, even Amazon probably has that kind of stuff. It's probably not, you're not going to find a really thin double stick adhesive at Home Depot or the auto parts store or anything like that. But we'll never be able to get as much of it on there as they originally had. So just a couple little strips in some strategic spots, kind of to hold it up against the sides there. And these little notches don't really work all that well, so I'm just going to put a pretty good strip right there. And we'll put one more strip right there. And the last one we'll do right. The little tab seems to work pretty good on this side, so I'm gonna leave that in place. And that's about the best we're gonna do. So go ahead and burnish it down. You could use the pry tools, whatever. And this kind of adhesive, the longer you let it, especially if it's got clamp force, it's gonna hold better. So just, if you have the patience to leave it overnight, that's even better. So before we even get any further, there's one point that's pretty difficult on these. It's going to be the high-low switch, and you can see it has these little ribs popping through. The bottom is not an issue. It kind of wants to snap in place right there on that little ledge, but this top part just doesn't seem to want to snap in there. So is what I've done is I took some jeweler's files and filed the inside of the black plastic to kind of get it the best fit I can get it. And then there's another modification we'll do to the actual switch itself to make it fit and slide nice and easily. So you want to pop that back out, and ideally, you know, some of the edges, we go ahead and took the burrs off. It's just the way they mold this, it doesn't have quite the same undercut as that original chrome piece. And I understand why they made this out of plated chrome versus the painted plastic. It's pretty critical. Like the chrome can take the wear of a switch dragging across it. The painted plastic, you're gonna have to modify these switches so it's not dragging across these and scratching up the plastic. So for durability's sake, the chrome is a little bit better in that regard, but certainly doesn't go with any of the trim on any of the new Vespas, hence why you're wanting to do a mod like this. So at this point, I think we got this fitting as good as we're gonna get it. Go ahead and lift all the adhesive backers out of the way. So And there's my last one right there. So this is all clean. I wasn't really touching all that much. Get some of those old adhesive boogers off it. And kind of the difficult part is everything wants to stick as you're assembling it. I'll start with the bottom. I kind of line up that tab the best I can. And because that seems to fit the best is at the bottom down there, and then kind of push it in place and the other areas here. So the best thing you could do for this would be to clamp it overnight with, like, if you have pressure on these, especially these top and bottom sections, to keep them stabilized and for that adhesive to really tighten up. But right now I'm just putting pressure on everything. Kind of want to hold it just fine, just like that. And it's these sides I have adhesive on, and this bottom right here. So as you can see, that's still not quite as flush as what it was originally, but we'll take care of that a little bit later when we reassemble the switch. So, all right, so at this point, I'm ready to put the switch together. All right, so we're gonna start with the housing for the turn signal switch. And we'll go ahead and put that right back in. And it should be able to just line up right through this window right here. So you want to take the turn signal switch, we'll start with that. If it doesn't fit through this window, you may need to get a pocket knife in there and trim around the opening. So we'll go ahead, kind of snap that in place. And you'll see how the it's almost flush. That's the way it should be. And at this point, we could put the 2 screws in here to hold this housing. And the way, sometimes when you're dealing with plastic screws, sometimes back it out and then try again. Definitely want to have some of the dielectric grease ready to go, because that's what you lubricate any of the pivots in these switches, and that's what you also lubricate the contacts to keep them from oxidizing. This applicator is a bit too much. You know, it's great for a battery post, but for something like this, we're dealing with something pretty small. So I'm just going to dispense some on this card right here. It's probably more than I'll ever need. And we can use our little screwdriver, and at a couple spots you want to put it along the whole process. So then there's a cam with 3 detents for your for the 3 positions of your turn signal, the center off. And now we're going to go ahead and flip this over. You have that turn signal switch. You see it's got the little actuator, the center button right there, and you see this slot right there, and that's where that long spring came out. So we'll go ahead and put the switch in there. This is where it's a little tricky. So I'm kind of tipping the switch up. I'm going to pop the spring in there very, very carefully. And I'm kind of closing down on the spring, but I'm going to have my screwdriver ready to push that spring into the slot. And I'll show you how that works. So I don't know if the camera's going to get this, but I'll try doing this. And kind of slip the screwdriver out from under there, and you'll know there's spring tension. I'm not letting go of the switch because that spring will go flying. And we're going to go ahead and flip it over like that. I'm just resting it on the switch. So I'm keeping pressure down on the switch right there, and then I'm going to take this little plastic Omega, drop that in there, and as long as everything's all lined up, this should just slide right around and clamp that switch. And it takes a little bit of work to get it to clamp around. If you had like forceps or something else, that would work as well to get it around the switch here. There we go. So I pop that around, make sure it's slotted in there. So before we go any further, make sure the switch goes side to side, just like that. If it's sticking a little bit, you may want to take it all back apart, and you may be taking the back side of the switch, like this one, and with your jeweler's file and filing the backside of the switch so it's not rubbing on this plastic here. It needs to move nice and freely. And the next step is we're going to go ahead and put the contactor in there. So the ball is already in place. There's also a spring under there. I'm not going to mess with it, but I'm going to put a small amount of that dielectric grease on it. And make sure the contact's still in place, right like that. Just drop it right in there, just like that. And next, you put a little bit of dielectric grease on those contacts. And we're going to go ahead and reintroduce our wiring back into this switch here. So you have that kind of flesh tone contactor right there. Again, a small amount of dielectric grease on those. It's going to help preserve them. They don't really put much from the factory, I noticed, so a little bit more is going to help everything work better. There's two more spots. I'm going to put a little bit on these there's three edges here. So the switch kind of slides together. You see they're kind of like designed just to snap in place. So we'll start by sliding this. Actually, you know, I'll start by sliding the top in, and then carefully. Actually, I'll do it this way here. So I'll slide that in there, and then just carefully push it in place. So things pretty fragile here. If you're having difficulty getting it back in, you could also put the screwdriver in there in between the tan part, and it may even be worth loosening that screw again, just like kind of how we did in the first steps, because that makes it a little easier to. There we go. So pretty close. There we go. It's almost going to pop in there. There it is, all snapped together. So before we go any further, working perfect. So just the way it should. So we're all set there. Let's move on to an easy switch. We'll just put this, the horn button. This is pretty easy. You just like kind of slide it through. And then we'll put the two screws like such here. And you can see they got little tabs on there that kind of center the switch. All right, so now on to the second hardest switch, which is our high-low switch. First of all, this is not going to slide all that well, so you may want to have some sandpaper out. It's just thicker here. I mean, if you're just putting back together with a chrome one, it's not going to be an issue. So the back side of the switch, you could just take 120, 200 grit paper, and it may take a couple tries. Might as well just do this manual task. You want that switch to be floating off the painted surface. Then kind of want to dust it off, set that aside. Get the joystick out of the way. Fortunately, that joystick's all pretty straightforward. We're going to take that square, the spring that's kind of has that square end. It's got like the flat bottom. That goes into this little slot right here. And again, if it's not staying in place, dielectric grease is going to help you. It's not going to hurt anything if you have a little bit too much in there. And while we're at it, see those contacts all in there? Might as well get those. Put a little bit more grease on those too. Keep the corrosion from attacking those. So the next step, we have this the actual slide. The contacts are staying in place. There's springs behind those. I'm not going to mess with those. The spring's already in place. I want to put a pretty generous glob of dielectric grease on that top of that spring, and then we're going to carefully set the detent ball right on top of that spring right there. And there's 2 detents in this nylon housing. That's those balls, that detent will catch those 2 right there. So now I can flip it over, the ball's not going to fall out, and you can see the slot's a little larger on the one side right there. So go ahead, just drop that in place, and it's kind of towards the outside, if towards the end of the grip, and make sure those contacts are all in place. And we can carefully lower this on top of that switch there. So again, kind of push these in place. Let's see how it all goes. Snap it all in. There we go. So it's snapped in place. I'm just going to hold it and test the switch. Feels perfect actually, so I don't think we have any issues. I'm still holding the switch. Put the screws in from the back side. So are you still hanging in there in this video? It's a long video. This is more like working on a Swiss watch than rebuilding an engine or a transmission on a Vespa. I'll tell you that. Maybe not quite to the level of taking apart a watch, but so there we go. And while we're at it, let's just pop the joystick in there, because that's the last one, that last and the easiest one. Don't attempt to take that apart. It's got several switches in it. And my suggestion, I'm not going to do this in the video, it may be worth plugging this all in, plugging the speedometer in, plugging all this stuff in before you reinstall it. Make sure every single switch functions. The last thing you need to do is put it all back together and something's just not working right. Your lights aren't working right, or so on. So the joystick's pretty self-explanatory. It's kind of got a D shape, so there's a flat on the top right there, and you just push straight in, it snaps right in. That works nice and straightforward and simple. This is a switch that's a little more difficult because it may need extra clearance. The best way to push this on is put your thumb behind here, because you can't push on the switch. We're gonna the slot, the hole on the bottom is right there. So I'm gonna put my 2 thumbs back there and push really, really tight, and it should snap in place. And I can tell you it's kind of grinding, you know, because there should be it should return when you do it in the flash position. So that's still grinding on the switch housing. So we're going to carefully pop this off and pretty much just sand it down even more, because otherwise you're going to end up with scratches from the switch just grinding on that painted surface of this switch. You carefully use the nylon tool, pretty much same steps to get it removed. Just a little more careful because now I'm dealing with a painted part, not a chrome piece. So we know the switch is working fine. So once you've tested it, you know it's all good. And the switches slide good. Your next step is we're going to put some zip ties to hold the wiring, and you want to use some like 4-inch miniature zip ties. They're like 1/10 of an inch wide. They're pretty small little zip ties, so you need 2 of them, just like the original. You could refer to the earlier part of the video. They pretty much bundle it in 2 different spots. So you have the joystick, and there's the boss where the one of the screws goes, and you could just put 1 zip tie through this like that. Get something like that, and then Go ahead and pull it tight. And we'll take our diagonals right like this. Go ahead and cut that. And pretty much do the same exact thing with this other one. So we're actually at the turn signal boss right here. And it doesn't really matter which direction you go, just however you can get the zip tie through. Kind of pop it up, and we're going to go around the wires for the horn switch and the turn signal, just like that. So go ahead and get that zip tie started. And I noticed this one kind of isn't quite on the sheathing of the turn signal, but that's the way it was. So just like that to kind of stabilize the wires. And go ahead, maybe turn the zip tie in there so it's not. And there we go, got the left side done. All right, time to move on to the right side. All right, so we have our right switch. It's a little simpler, fortunately, after going through all that. The left switch. Just like the first step, go and get that zip tie out of the way. Separate the wiring. Kind of goes around that peg there. Start with the easy start button right there. So no issues taking that out. The whole button comes out completely intact. Move on to the seat unlock button right up here. And none of these have those contacts or little sealed individual small micro switches or small switches in there, with the wires going to them. So just like that, pop this one out. It's got the little plunger in there for the switch. And then we'll I think that's a ASR button right there, so go ahead and pull that. Pretty similar to that seat pop button. Again, all the same style black screws. And just like I said on the left, you cannot get any of these parts individually. So if you lose something, ruin it, you're getting a whole entire switch. We do have those available, 1D003878 or 1D003879 is part numbers for these switches. And they're shared across all the various versions of the GTS 2023 and later. All right, so this other switch, which is your kill switch, this seems to need a lot of brute force to pry off. Sometimes you could pry it off if you can't, because what you need to do is, just like we were taking apart the turn signal switch, we'll go ahead and open up the back cover to gain access. And it's got these little tabs. Just like that, pop it out, but you don't want it flying across the room. Carefully get that out of the way. So you can kind of see how the switch works. Goes side to side and pushes a little plunger. Well, if you can shine a flashlight down there, there's two little releases on this black part that attach, and you could kind of pry them out a little bit. And the other thing you could do is push the switch from the backside with a screwdriver. And it just takes quite a bit of force to get it. Sometimes you want to have two pry tools in there, or two screwdrivers, however you want to do it. The pry tools are a little safer on the switch. There it is, popped. So pull that out, and you can see the two little slots in there that engage in that little thing. And all right, so I snapped the shutter back in before I take this out. Go ahead and pull the two screws out. And we'll go ahead and separate the wiring. See how this individual switch And that's, you know, pretty much that little guy. It snaps in there, but I'm not going to snap it in right now. So we'll set that aside. And you can see the buttons are still in place on these. So there's like a larger and a smaller tab. Just go ahead and push those down. I could push the one with my finger. Be careful because there's going to be a spring that stays with that button there. So that's separated out. And then this ASR button, it's got a couple plastic tabs. Kind of got to just push them down through. And there we go. Got it separated. And that pulls right out. And just like the previous step on that left switch, we're going to have to separate this adhesive out. This side doesn't quite have as much, but again, you could try doing it without that adhesive. You know, I'm pulling really, really hard. It looks like I might be able to get it, but the denatured alcohol is going to attack that adhesive to make the job a little easier. Get a little bit of that in there. Ooh. And there we go. With that denatured alcohol, it kind of just attacks that adhesive. I actually got quite a bit in there. That worked pretty good, actually. We'll go and just like that other one, go ahead and clean all that adhesive off. I'm not going to bore you with scraping. All right, so this is all clean. Spent a good 10 minutes on it. We'll take the replacement switch cover right here. Kind of do the same thing, clean it up inside and grease out of there. Let's do a little test fit. See how it snaps in there. That snaps nice, but then this top half doesn't quite snap in, so I think I'll get a little heavy on the adhesive up here. You see it's kind of got a nice little gap up there. And technically, you could get away with not even removing this button, but I got out of the way. I didn't really want to get the solvent on it. So I got my thin strip of that double stick tape. Go ahead and put some right in here. I'll start right there. And I'll put another on this little flat right here. That's a good spot where you could hold it down. And last, we'll do a strip right here. Just like such, and you know, if you want to put a little bit more somewhere in there, just be careful you don't want to make all this stuff too thick. Probably get one right in there. You kind of got to burnish it in there. I'll just use my nail. So we'll go ahead and burnish all that down. Pry tools work great for that. And I don't think I'm going to do any trimming on this one, so let's see how it all goes. Nice thing is we only have that one slide switch, a little different style, and it actually sits a little higher off the plastic, and you don't use the kill switch all that much, is my experience, versus a turn signal or a high beam switch where you're using that while operating the scooter. So it's quite all right. See how this all goes. And snap this side in. There we go. Pushing it as tight as I can to kind of get it to seal up in there. Same with this. May want to clamp it overnight. Looks like it's holding. And it's gonna be more readily gonna hold better if you can clamp this overnight. So we'll start, like I said, this switch probably didn't need to be removed, but I did because I didn't want to get solvent on there. Put the spring in there and just snap it back in place, so that works perfect. Nice simple switch. The ASR switch. It takes a little bit more to get this in. The ASR kind of faces up. Just go ahead and snap it in. Button works like that. And at this point, we'll go ahead and start assembly here. So we'll go back to our most difficult switch, which was the engine kill switch. Attach that with some screws. We have our ASR button, which has the two little fangs on it. And it actually holds those two locks out, so there's no chance of the switch falling out. Go ahead and get that in place. Make sure the button works, feels good, some spring tension to it, and the seat pop button. Just like that. And the easiest button, our start switch. So just kind of lever that right in there. Last two screws. We got the cap for our kill switch. All right. Again, probably want to test all this. You can see where the kill switch needs to go. May want to take some of that dielectric grease, put a little bit on the sides just to make it go on a little easier. They take quite a bit of force to get off. Kind of support the whole housing from the back. And push the switch in there. Works perfect. And it's snapped in there. So there's that whole switch, everything's working. We could test it before you reassemble it on the scooter. One zip tie, kind of around this peg here, just like that. Not quite as many wires on this side, so it's a little simpler and tidier here. And that kind of keeps everything secure. So here we got our pair of switches all assembled, ready to install back on the scooter. Don't those look good? They're gonna look great on a Super Sport. The carbon fiber one might be also a good option, matte black if that's what you're looking for. So look out for my next video. I'll put these in. Should go pretty smooth putting these back on the scooter. Well, thanks for watching. That was a long one there on all the steps to swap over these covers on both the left and right side. Maybe you find that video useful down the road, 10 years, when you need to overhaul these switches for some reason. or maybe you're looking for the upgraded look. If you're looking to have this service done, you have perfectly working switches, you can look at the scooterwest.com mail order services, and we do offer that. You can mail in both your switches with the chrome, and we will swap it. And as you saw through that video, it's not an easy job. There's a lot of spots where you can make an error or lose a part, and then you'd just be in for disaster and you need to replace the whole entire switch. So keep that in mind. We do offer that service. But I'll see you on the next one. Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and scooterwest.com here in San Diego, California.